Alright, welcome back. So in the previous episode, we figured out how to parse a podcast and parse the episodes, and we tried to pass some of that intermediary data to our podcast model. And obviously our podcast model blew up because it doesn't have a lot of the fields that we'd passed from the data source itself. So what we want to do is just go through here and add any of the missing fields. So let's try and do that. So for models, I think I want this to be a text field, a description here, we want site link, it's going to be model URL field, we're going to have a site link and also a feed link, pub date is going to be a date time field, last build date is also going to be a date time field, and TTL is going to be models dot. Can we have like a time delta maybe? How best to store date time? What kind of things do we have available to us here? We have a time field? I wonder what a time field is. Let's have a look. Django time field. Model field reference. Time field. Let's have a look. So it allows us to represent a date time.timer. I wonder what's the best way to represent a time delta. Duration field. Okay, that's definitely what we want. Duration field. Is there anything we're missing? Hopefully not. So let's just quit that out. I think I'm going to modify my test to actually try and import some of these models and create them. I'm going to import our podcast here. And then inside here, instead of a breakpoint, we want to do podcast equals podcast, parsed, podcast. This should drive some of our logic. Let's test that. That seems to be working quite well. In fact, suspiciously well. Let's print our podcast. Talk Python to me. Okay, so that's working. What happens if we do podcast.save? Okay, cool. It's going to blow up because certain dates are in an invalid format. Looks like this is a string, so it's obviously going to complain about that. So let's just do some Googling and find out what format those dates are in, because I don't know what format this is on the top of my head. So let's just say podcast feed date format, RFC 822. Okay, so now let's do Python RFC 822. It does look like this is available. Okay, since version 2.3 email package should be used. Okay. This is really outdated docs. Let's just do Python free email examples pass RFC. Okay. Email.parser import parser. This is probably going to take me away. Oh no, I don't care about the standard. Is there a pass date? Bypasser. Is there like a utils thing in here? I think I remember using this before and it's in utils, so let's just have a look. Shell from email.utils import. In fact, let's just do this in IPython. It will give us completion from. You can see, I've done it before. So pass date to date time. Pass date. Yes, I have done it before. Date time. We can look here. We can copy this. It's probably the same example. Yes, so I've done this before when I was practicing. So that gives us the date time. So I think in our parser we just need to include some of this logic. So let's go in here, and every time we pass a date, we need to include this. So let's paste paste, and then so things like pub date is going to be pass date to date time. Yeah, pass date to date time. Why does it delete everything there? Pass date to date time. I'm going to wrap you. And I know there's another pub date down here as well, so I'm going to copy that. And then we also want to do last build date as well, so last build date and then last build date. And let's see if that gets us any further. So it's going to say invalid date value or format none, data.get pub date. That's interesting. Where is that failing? This is failing in past podcast. Let's add a breakpoint here. And then say data.get pub date. Because there is no data, you're right, it's channel, because again I was copy pasting. Not good. Let's try this now, continue. Okay, let's have a look. Where is this saying? str object has no attribute. Past date to date time. Let me have a look. Interesting. This is the duration field. The only duration field we have is this TTL. Okay, so the clue there is TTL, and we probably want to do. Okay, so this is a string, so we probably want to do convert to an int, and then we want to say import datetime as dt, and then do dt time delta, and make this the time in minutes. So minutes is going to be equal to this. Let's try this again and continue. Okay, so table podcast has no column name description, which is true because there is no table. We've just been trying to do this all in memory, so let's ignore that for now and then just try and do the episodes potentially. So let's say episodes is episode. No, it's not. The episodes here is going to be episode EP for EP in past episodes. Yes, that's right. Let's see if let's see what happens if we do this, and then just ignore that for now. Let's see if this complains at all. Episode is not defined. Yep, you're right. It's not. So episode. Continue. Right, because I haven't spelt it correctly. Let's continue again. Episode got unexpected keyword, description link. Okay, so now I need to actually start fleshing out the episode. So we got description, link, GUI, pub date. So let's just copy some of this stuff. We don't need this. We want link, pub date. We also need a GUID. Let's just make a. Is there a GUID field or a UID? I don't think it's guaranteed to be UID, so let's just make it a char field and give it a max length of this. Description, I forgot to copy. So add you in, title, description, podcast link. Okay, let's see how far that gets us now. Continue. Alright, so that all seems to be passing, so I think we're in a pretty good position now to actually make this migration. So make the migrations podcasts. Description is going to need a one-off field. Let's just provide a one-off. Okay, it's going to ask for a bunch of actual fields here. What I think might be easier is actually just to delete the DB and start again, because I cannot be bothered to provide all that data. So what we're going to do is we're going to nuke the database. We're going to nuke the migrations folder because I don't care about it for the time being, and I'm going to do make migrations podcasts, and then I'm going to migrate. And then what I'll also need to do is create a new super user. So create super user. Oh, yes, I do mean that. I'm going to call you root again. We're going to call you jackevans.gb.net. Choose a password that I can remember. and then we're going to hopefully go back in here and just run the server again. Let's go back here. Let's go to our admin, check that everything still works in there. Enter our password. Yeah, let's update that. Okay, so there should be no podcasts and episodes now, but at least the tests should now run. Okay, that works. So what we can do now potentially is podcast.save. Let's see if this works. It looks like we're missing a feed link from the podcast, so let's double check that we did include that. Past podcast site link, feed link, that's interesting. Not null constraint failed, podcast feed link. Interesting. Let's just add a breakpoint here and have a look at the past podcast data, podcast, and see if there's a feed link in there. There isn't a feed link, that's interesting. Past podcast. Where have I gone wrong? We've passed the podcast here. What is in past podcast? There is a description. Site link, feed link is none. Okay, so why is feed link none? Because I'm looking at the channel atom link, and I'm looking at the this is why, because I've completely spelled href wrong. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Continue. Okay, so the podcast appeared to have actually saved, which is good. So maybe we can link each episode to the parent podcast here. So I can do podcast equals podcast. If I remember to save the podcast first, what happens then? Okay, that seems to work. Let's get rid of this breakpoint, and instead of that, let's say for episode in past episodes, or say past episode in past episode. Let's say episode equals episode, past episode, podcast equals podcast. Let's try and then save the episode and see what happens. Yeah, that seems to have worked. And then maybe let's just do self assert equal podcast objects.count is 1, and then episode.objects.count is going to be 4. So let's just check that the data is in our database. Okay, that seems to work. And then let's just have a breakpoint here and double check that we can do things like podcast episode set. Okay, that's cool. So we can see the first episode. Okay, and we can see things like the last episode. Maybe we can do order by. I'm not sure quite how you order by things in Django. But yeah, this seems to be working. So 0 is the most recent. Okay, and that seems to be a byproduct of just as they were, how they were added to the database. So yeah, I think this is a good place as any to put a halt to this video, as we've fleshed out the models completely. And I think in the next video I want to add the option to create a podcast by URL just in the admin. So instead of filling out all these fields and all this information, I want to just be able to add a podcast simply by URL and have it fetch it from the web automatically.